Hello, everybody. Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas. I posted a story to my Facebook this morning. I think you'll find real interesting. And it's concerning, partially concerning the death of my mom, the death of my father-in-law, Don Calloway. Mom died the month before I was ambushed and shot with my phone lines cut with still unanswered questions in Hobbs, New Mexico. And then Don dies just like 3 weeks before the murder attempt. And then my dad and Ann Calloway, who are the widows, they end up marrying each other, and they quit talking to me. Okay, that's a bizarre thing to happen right there. And so I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to read this story to you that I wrote that I think you're going to find real interesting. And let me get back to it. Okay, right here. Okay, and 11 years ago. On January 4th, 2012, my son Josh and his family drove down from Amarillo to Midland for a late Christmas. Josh told me after he got here, "We're going to get down to the bottom of this, Dad." And I was excited because I finally had somebody in my family helping me with the nonstop crimes going on at my home. Keep in mind, I'd been reporting break-ins to my house to the police 14 months before that. They were going on every day. And the previous owner died right before I bought this home. That evening, his younger brother, Preston Corgill, come over, as Preston lives here in Midland. We were out in the garage smoking when Josh says to me, "This just doesn't make sense, Dad. Somebody going underground, then coming back to your home." And then he looks at Preston and he giggles. It was clear to me that Josh and Preston know something about what's going on at my house. And 3 weeks later, I was ambushed and shot by somebody under my home with my phone lines cut. Josh quit talking to me after the murder attempt and has never been back to my home. I did talk to him on Christmas Day and New Year's Day this year, but we didn't talk about the crimes at my home, which have never stopped. Preston texted me this week and asked if he could come by, but then I didn't hear from him again. I wondered if he was going to tell me something about the crimes going on at my house. I believe Preston is a good guy. Another thing that Josh told me on the night that he was here was about the ex-wife, who I'd just separated from at the time. He said that on the night that Mom died, which was the month before, him and his wife Jolene heard a woman in my dad's bedroom talking to him all night long. The only other woman in the house at the time was my ex-wife, and I suspect that is who Dad was talking to. There's still many unanswered questions about my mom's death, but I later figured out that my brother and Dad lied about what really happened that night, and I believe that the ex-wife knows too on the night my mom died. I remember the ex-wife asked me on the night that Mom died if I wanted a Lortab to help me sleep, and I told her that I didn't need that. I later suspected that she drugged me, which is why I slept through her going into my dad's room that night. She was an RN who carried needles in her purse, and I was seeing these odd round bruises on my thighs that I later found out were injection site bruises. Josh was supposed to be here for 4 days, but the next morning he knocked on my door with tears in his eyes and told me that his grandpa, Don Calloway, had died. This meant he had to go back to Amarillo. Don Calloway and my former mother-in-law, Ann Calloway, built the Hobbs home that I lived in for 16 years, and they also built the one next to it. I now suspect that home is rigged with a tunnel and had people in the attic, but I didn't suspect that at the time. It's now known that homeowners all over the country have reported people in the attic. And there's a video and movie about that where my daughter had told me about a light being on in the attic of my Hobbs home, and I hadn't been up there. And so I think it's called a friggin' attic. I'll put a link to it. After I survived the murder attempt, my dad, who was single because my mom had died the month before the murder attempt, marries Ann Calloway, my first mother-in-law, who was single because Don Calloway had died a few weeks before the murder attempt, and then they quit talking to me, with Ann calling me crazy. It looks like my family knew about the Hobbs home being rigged, which means they knew about this one in Midland. That explains why they haven't supported me while I live with daily crimes being committed against me and many people trying to smear my name and cover up the crimes and murders connected with my home. I don't want to believe that my family tried to murder me, but I do suspect that they know who did and possibly have been threatened. I prayed they would speak up and stop the crimes that have been committed against me for over 30 years. I have reason to believe this crime ring is behind multiple murders, and there's no telling how many homes they've rigged. This is Buddy Webb, Midland, Texas.